What's up, y'all? LTJ Reeves is here. This is Throwing Light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Before we get to our guest, I'm super excited to have. Remember, this is a year of building on my YouTube channel because all the Throwing Light interviews were there. I started the Throwing Light tour. We've been around Texas. We were in New York. We're going to San Francisco next month. Please follow every panelist that participates in Throwing Light Together tour. Their segment is on there. The New York segment is going to be up this week. So please go watch, go share. This is all about bringing everybody together. So if you need to figure out how to get to my YouTube channel, just follow this video. If you are watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Instagram, the link or how to get to my YouTube is there. So let's go ahead and get started. I have got Liquid Rulz, Master Liquid Rulz. Pronouns she, they, them, that bitch. So, also former international Miss Leather. How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
A
Uh,
complete pleasure. Complete pleasure.
so I am Master Liquid Rules. I have been in the community for 30 years now. I've been around since 95, or as
You
Vi
look
Johnson
30.
says,
You look 30. It's less than that. Wow.
I got adult children and I'm a grandmother. So
Okay. Okay.
yes, drinking water. Water does it.
Smart water though. It's smart water. So where are
Yes,
you at
and
right
like
now?
wait, what did you say?
Where are you at right now?
Well, I live in New York, but right now I am visiting my leather family in Baltimore. I had to get a little escape, so luckily I have a job where I can work remotely from anywhere.
Fantastic. Where y'all getting into in Baltimore?
Eating way too much.
Is the food good?
The food is good. Just enjoying each other's company, laughing, talking about life, watching America's Next Top Model documentary.
Yes, yes, we were talking about this before we started the show, y'all. So we have opinions.
Definitely.
Okay, well let's get started. Why don't you go ahead and just open up and talk about how you got involved initially?
So I got involved in leather through gay men. So back in the 90s when the clubs were cooler in New York City, all I hung out with was gay men. So one of the lovely men that I knew decided that after I had been home for like a month or so not doing anything, it's like, girl, you need to go out. I got the place for you. And I was like, "Ugh, where are we going?" I was like, I don't want to go to Stonewall. I don't want to go Luke's and Leroy's. I don't want to go. It was like, no, I got a place, but you got to get dressed up. And I'm like, hoe dressed or glam dress? It's like, go with hoe. So, so we went out and we ended up at the Vault. And that was my first introduction into, kink, leather, events. And I was just in awe. I was in awe. Like my eyes were just like, I need to be doing all of these things, but I need to be doing them openly and not just, in the bedroom.
Right.
And from there, I started hanging out, at Hellfire and a couple of other places in the city. And I started to meet other leather folks. And back then, there were very few of us, especially few that looked like me, Black femme, Black women that were in community. And I met a good friend of mine, Sir Raven, through all of that. And, it just started from there. And I had, beautiful people in my life and strong Black women in my life that influenced how I viewed leather, how I saw leather, how I moved in leather. And, I just wanted to absorb everything that I knew, and that I was learning from the people that I was around. And that's what I did, I took up space in a way that was for me to learn, but to give back. And I think about 10 years, I waited 10 years into my journey before I started teaching, doing classes and presentations and stuff like that because I wanted to learn. Now, people go on YouTube and they know everything. So, that's how they become, they've been in community a week and now they're presenters and educators. But I wanted to have the experience and live the experience before I went out educating and talking about my own lived experiences. So that's how it started. And, I hit the ground running. I never even thought about titles or anything back then. I was just like, I just want to be involved in everything. I want to go to events. I want to go to conferences. I want to learn, 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 learn.
When did you pursue
I'm a
your
life learner. So,
when did you pursue your first title?
ooh, I wouldn't say pursue. The only title that I've actually pursued was Northeast Leather and this title, International Miss Leather. The other titles, I got blindsided by them. So, Miss Henrietta Hudson in 2008, um, I was going to an event there. It was a fetish event. It was Miss Henrietta Hudson Fetish. I didn't know that this was going on. So they wanted more contestants than what they had. I knew the owner, I knew the people there, and they was like, "Do you mind entering?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." I didn't think I would win. I didn't think anything would come of it. I was just like, I'm just being a body there. And come to find out, I won.
Yeah.
So, and when it was announced, I wasn't even inside. I was outside when it was announced. And I was just like, wait, what? I heard it over the speaker. So I run back in and I find out I won. And the producers of New York Leather Weekend were there. And I found out that this was a feeder contest and that I would have to go into this contest, which was a few months away. So I was just like, holy shit. I was like, what did I get myself into? And I was like, you know what? Why not? Let me just do it. And that was an eye opener for me because that was the first big contest, not a bar title, but a regional, that I did. And I was the only person of color. I was the only femme presenting person there. I was the only woman there. I was competing against white gay men that looked like the typical Tom of Finland, you
Yeah.
know, and I wasn't nervous, so to speak. I was just being myself, and that's who I was and who I always will be. And I had such a great time. And I didn't win. That was the first contest I lost. But I lost with so much grace and made so many amazing friends and connections along the way that the losing factor didn't even mean anything to me, you know. But again, title holding isn't for everyone because the title holder who did win stepped down a month after winning. So, but then I took a break. I was like, it's not this is not something that I'm focused on. This is
Right.
not the end goal because um, I live and work in community. Social work I've been doing for 20 plus years. And so it wasn't something that was I need to do this to get a step ahead, you know? So I didn't run for another title until 12 years later, and that was based off of a promise that I had made during Pride. And a friend of mine, we were sitting on the Eagle float, and he said, "I'm thinking of bringing back contests to New York. Would you run?" And we were tipsy. So I was like, yeah, sure, you bring it back. Because, everybody has big dreams of bringing things back, and it never happens. And I was like, yeah, sure. If you bring a contest back, I'll run for it. 6 months later, it was like, here's the date for the contest. Are you still interested in running? And so I'm a person that keeps my word. And I said, yes, I will still run. And so I ran and I won.
Fantastic.
And then the pandemic hit. So
How'd you navigate?
and I continued to work.
So because a lot of, so many people didn't get to, because I have a few friends that got their titles literally right before the pandemic started, and then they weren't able to have I don't use the word normal, but maybe very active year with their title. Some obviously got to keep it for like a year extra or 2 years in some cases. Um, so that's always very interesting. How did you keep doing the work during that time?
So, again, I'm always active in community. It's what I do, what I live for, how I thrive. Um, there was so much going on at that time because the contest was for 2020. The last public event that I did was MAL because that was in January.
Mhm.
In March,
Yeah,
everything shut down.
that's right.
But
Mhm.
so many things were going on during that time with protests because of George Floyd and things like that. So what I was doing was while I was working, because at the time I was a supervisor at Adult Protective Services, everybody went remote. So while I'm on the clock, as long as I got my work phone with me and I can, answer emails and stuff, I was at home because I didn't like being home and I needed to do something. It had nothing to do with the title. I just needed to do something. So watching the protests, I started ordering supplies and making PPE kits for people. So I would put masks, gloves, I would put the little mini Purells in there. I would put protein bars, bottles of water, all in a Ziploc bag. And I mean huge bags that I'm walking around with IKEA bags and going to these protests
That's phenomenal.
and
That's
making
phenomenal.
sure that people had these supplies and giving them out to everyone and still marching along with them. And I did this throughout that time. And then, watching all of this going on, looking at people who, especially Black and brown folks who are experiencing, Black and brown exhaustion from dealing with things that this is the norm for us, I started doing these series online. So I started teaching online and I started doing this sort of group therapy session called Sis, Are You All Right? And it was to give Black and brown women the space to talk about, everything that was going on and for, for anyone that was non-Black or brown to sit and be witness, but witness in silence. So it was a good thing and it took off running and people really enjoyed the idea of me going out giving, stuff for the PPE. So people started donating money. And I would buy, because I was spending my own money, I would buy whatever they donated. I would buy what I needed. And then the rest I would donate to different organizations. And I focused a lot on trans organizations and Black health and, colleges and things like that. And that's what I was giving the money to that was left over. And for accountability and transparency, I would always share receipts, because that's just who I am. And I really enjoyed doing that. And it wasn't anything that I needed to post about, because a lot of people in community, the first thing they want to do is, hey, look what I did for. I don't do that. A lot of the pictures that come up of me doing those things in community is because news outlets was there and someone reposted, or I saw you here and I saw you there and reposted it. But, I don't do anything to get a pat on the back. I do it because I want to do it and I care about the community.
I think this, so we met. I don't know if you remember the first time we met. Okay, so
Pride.
it was Claw 2023. I just got my title, but you and Marcus were standing in the back, and I actually took a picture for you like a fan. And,
Oh my God, yeah.
it was such a brief encounter, but and I think we had stood in line to do a title holder thing or something like that. But it was a
The
very
the title holder parade
yeah, I
thingy
think
that they
it
do.
was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Those things.
There's so much we can do in turning about talking about the community, and there's something I really want to love to talk to you about if you're comfortable with it. But you're a mother and a grandmother, and I've had the opportunity of having someone on my panels that also was a mother, and a lot of the conversations about being, good parenting during these times. And I'm just curious, how do your children view you, and how do you continue to be a presence as a parent? And keep that respect, like that's amazing. And I think just a wonderful thing when someone is being their authentic self and able to be that in all their avenues. So I'm just curious, how's that been for you?
It's actually with my kids were pretty great. I can't say I was like that helicopter mom, which I'm sure that they were sick of. But when you have daughters and you've lived through certain experiences, of course you want to protect them at all costs. But I was always open. Of course, they've seen my leather, you know, in my bedroom, one of my rooms that I had, it was just dedicated to all of like my floggers and things. They knew that I modeled. They seen me in magazines. They see me in print. They see me on the news. We had conversations, and I've always had conversations with my kids since early age, even about consent. So when I talk or teach about consent, I'm like, you don't start it as an adult. You start it when they're children, because again, life experiences, I never, if a family member wanted to hug my child and my child said no, I'm not going to be like, yeah, go ahead, hug them. No, they have autonomy. No, they said no, they don't want to hug, so it was just about being open without giving too much information because some things they didn't need to know. They didn't need to know mommy beat people for money.
Yeah.
But they had, when they became adults, they know now. But when they were younger, when they were underage, no, they didn't know that, that I was pro-doming and stuff like that. Because again, I worked 9 to 5. So that's what they've seen. They've always had this vision of me that, either mom's going to school, mom's working, or mom's doing this, mom's doing that. She's doing so many other things. So how does she have time to do anything else? But I was always present for them, and
Are they were they inquisitive?
it's been a journey.
Were they inquisitive?
Yes.
Did they ask questions?
Yes. Sometimes too many questions.
I can
But
only
but I
imagine.
rather them ask questions and ask me questions than to find out things online like most kids do. That was one thing I always said. I said I don't want social media raising my kids. I don't want the internet raising my kids. I don't want the streets raising my kids because we grew up at a time where this didn't exist. We actually had to use phones and dial numbers and, beepers and that's the way we had to, connect with each other and write letters. There wasn't all of this technology. So, sometimes technology is a wonderful thing and sometimes it's the worst thing in the world. So if they saw something they didn't know and they were curious about, they would always ask me. And
See,
I was always ready and available to give them that information.
so when I'm growing up, I grew up in the transition. So, my mom bought her first computer in 97. I was in junior high. And so, yeah, could you imagine back then a kid getting the internet? You get what I'm saying? And with no supervision. Okay. So, I grew up in North Louisiana. I grew up in a very racist and very ignorant place. Me being a black person growing up around redneck white people and trying to pass and survive was a totally very, very like very tough experience. But when you're around that kind of culture, you're more of like a fetish than an attraction. You know what I'm saying? So I never felt like I was desired as like to obtain and I want Lewis, I want to be. It was more like, what can I do with Lewis or what, and so I was sexualized very young because my mom was always working. I had the internet, I had friends, I was getting into things. I think my mom maybe so it was I was senior in high school and I was having some issues and my mom was like, you want to get your father? I'm like, that was the only time that we ever had like a conversation. But we are not educated. And I think of all the time I wasted in my health education class in high school where I had a coach. And we sat there and we talked the whole time and got A's. We never took tests. If we did take a test, he gave us the answers to the test. It just fundamentally, what would my life have been of if I had been taught consent? Had I been taught, that I can say no or that I don't have to act on every sexual gratification? Like, I wish I had that knowledge and to even have a parent that could have had that conversation with me. So it's an amazing thing. And I'm glad that you shared that and talked about that right now because it's authentic And I really think, there are people that watch your show that are not of the leather community, and they need to see us as whole people. And so I just think that's amazing. People watching this, like having knowledge is not a, what do I want to say here? It's not tainting you. Knowledge is providing you with the tools to avoid situations or choose situations that are healthy for you. Um, Social work.
But if you, I want to go back to something you said because you said that, your the health coach was just giving you A's and all of this and just letting you. But I think a lot of that, even, in these coming days, there are some schools that the high schools give birth control and things like that you can actually get, and then they pulled back from that. There was, talk around HIV and AIDS education, and parents were like, don't teach my kid about that, which makes no
That
sense to me.
makes no sense.
They should learn, because the transmission of HIV does not just come from a sexual act. Some people are born with it, you know.
Exactly.
There's a lot of ways, you can get blood transfusions. There's so many, but people aren't thinking of it. They're only tying the sexual act to it. But then you look at some of these classes and they don't even they teach reproductive health you
Yeah.
know if
Yeah. That's,
this
yeah.
is the woman's part, this is the men's part, you put
Yeah.
them together, you have babies.
Right.
That's it. They don't teach the in between of all of those things. So
Right.
when my daughters were like, how do babies get here, I was like, okay, I'm gonna show you. We're gonna watch a video. You're gonna see two ways babies are coming out of you: vaginal delivery and C-sections. My kids were horrified,
I was
but these
lucky
are the things
being
that you should know.
I was lucky to be in like gifted and talented classes. So we were first introduced to the word sex when I was in sixth grade, gifted science. But we watched the first delivery of a woman when I was a freshman in my gifted biology. But had I been in any other class, that would have never happened. It was a trust with us because I grew up around rednecks and, and black people not treated fairly. So, it's been very interesting. Your social work, how has that played a part in who you are in your leather life?
It's weird with social work because social work was never my goal. It was never, my once upon a time goal in life was to become New York City's chief medical examiner.
Okay.
And that's what I was in school for. I was in school for forensic science. I graduated, and something in me, I don't know what it was. I was like, before I set off on this career path, I want to give back to community. And I said, I want to take the summer giving back to community and then, start the year on this new journey. And I started working in the city at Cal and Lord. And it was such a strange experience because I would see people coming in to get tested, and you know how the tests went based off of how they came out of that room,
Yeah.
you know? And I was like, I don't know if I could do that, and I would just watch and watch and watch. And I got a call from this organization, Housing Works, and I went and I interviewed with them for a case manager position. And by the time I left the interview to the time I got home, when I walked into my house, my phone was ringing. And they said, you're hired. And when I started meeting clients, the interactions were so organic and so easy for me because of life experiences and having family who've experienced addiction, who have, lived, with HIV, who have died from AIDS or AIDS-related illness. It was easy for me to have these conversations and have a different level of empathy than most other people that would have had. There was no judgment, no bias. I didn't have any of that. Like all of that was out of the window. And I always say that, I wanted to give back to the community, but the community never gave me back. And from then on, I stood in that field. So, I was working as a case manager in HIV and AIDS, and then I got certified as HIV tester and counselor, and I did syringe exchange harm reduction, and I worked in just different sectors of the community. And I did that for a while up until 2011. And then I dipped out of that realm of social work and I went into aging.
Aging,
And I
aging,
aging, yeah.
like
Aging,
getting
yep.
older.
Older adults.
Okay, okay. Please enlighten me on that.
So if you look at services now within the city, within the country, anywhere you go, so much services are focused on youth, but people tend to forget that we're all aging and there needs to be services in place for those who are aging. So I started working at this organization called SAGE. It's an LGBT organization, and they're the only at the time largest aging LGBTQ plus organization. And it was the best thing. It was so rewarding, working there and working in adult protective services. And it was seeing people for who they are, and especially getting a lens of LGBT older adults who have survived, the AIDS epidemic, and lived through it. And those who have been, shunned from their family, and the family that they have is the family that's just in their chosen family, with, in community, and creating advanced planning with them and making sure that they have, what they need. A lot of my clients, those who have passed on, the last hand they held when they took their last breath was mine, so just being there for them and providing them with the best of services, which can be anywhere from making sure that they have home delivered meals, making sure that they have, whatever medical equipment that they need, making sure that they have home care, making sure that they have somebody that is interacting with them on a regular basis, making sure that they're safe in the community, making sure that they have somebody to help advocate for them. Because unfortunately, we live in a society where people hate talking about politics, religion, and sex and finances. And imagine being in your 60s and 70s and going to a doctor and you're still actively having sex, but they're not offering you any STI testing or HIV testing because they don't think at your age you're still having sex.
Right, right.
So educating these, providers, going out and having, presentations to these providers about how to talk to older adults about their sexual lives. I had amazing support groups. I had one called Super Sex. It was about the sex you have, the sex you want to have, the sex you wish you were having. I had groups that it was all women groups. And we would talk about different things. We even talk about kink and stuff like that. A lot of my clients were in their 70s and they were having more sex and better sex than I was. And I was like, well, can I take some notes here? But having that conversation because they didn't have anyone to have that conversation with them, and just being that support. And people don't realize, again, they always forget about older adults. We are all aging. No one's going to be a youth forever, but making sure that you can age in place and you're not forgotten. I even started like a journaling book club, and it is called Remember Me. And so that they can talk about everything that they've experienced and tell their story so that when their time comes, they have somebody else to tell their story for them, and keep that story going. I had a client, she was 103 years old. She marched in Selma. She has pictures with Martin Luther King. She had pictures with Malcolm X. She had a letter, like this huge letter that came from the White House that Obama had sent her for all her activism that she had done in community. And one of the best things she told me was the funniest things. She goes, look, when my time comes, I need you to do one thing for me. So I'm like, what? She was like, I need you to come over, go in my closet, and remove my toy box before my kids and my grandkids get to my
Baby,
house.
let me tell you, I got
And
that
this woman's
plan once you
103 years
finish.
old.
I have friends designated to come remove things if something happens to me. Please. Go get rid of it immediately. But I want to just jump. I just want to say this. I worked in an active adult community as a property manager, and none of the conversations almost were about paying rent. They were, oh, this person slept with me and gave me an STD. And I'm talking about in a little community. I am always a believer that you can teach an old dog new tricks. So I taught them creative writing, and just through that experience, they were able to just educate me on the world, but they were also being taught that, oh, I can grow as a thinker no matter what my age
Mm.
is. And so, but there were lots of childish things, but it truly is an experience because, I grew up in a Black Baptist church. My mom was about service. I had to be at church every Sunday. I had to be at Sunday school. I taught children's church. My mom was my Sunday school teacher. She was part of the Young Women Auxiliary. She was a deaconess of the church. I had to go help deliver dinners to our elderly, go sit with them. Like I was raised to do that. I was also raised to go to a juvenile detention center and be an example for the guys that are locked. My mom made me go and be an example. So I just I'm aware of that. And I just think it's so important for us to continue to treat, not to treat age like it's a disability. Like your life is not over. You still can be sexually active. We just got to keep people human. And I think to some degree, people start, I don't want to use the word dehumanize, but stop looking at people that are aging as human beings with the same emotions and feelings as everybody else. So
Ageism is real,
it is
you
real,
know?
and a lot, and I get it, and we hear a lot, and that's one thing I do like about this community because I do. There's so many people that I look up to that are elders in our community. So we're getting towards the end, so I have one question for you, and I ask everybody the
Yes.
same question. Okay, what is an aspect of our community that you feel that we are not shedding enough light on?
Not shedding enough light on.
Mhm.
I think there's some things that we need to take light away from.
Okay, well, if you want to have that conversation, we can have that. If it's up to you, answer it how you feel.
I think we should take some light away from the drama that's going on. I think this community is being broken down into cliques and the cancel culture and the call out culture, and while all of those are great and they are needed in certain times in certain space, I think people get so focused on that and the drama because they don't really care about what's going on with the person or what the issue is. They just want to be a voice in the drama, and they're not giving any suggestions or any input on how to make this situation better. They're just being, a sounding board to scream into the void. And there's so many things going on. People get too caught up in, don't get me wrong, I'm a title holder, but just because I'm a title holder. My title holder is an extent, my title is an extension of me. I'm not my title. So, I try to tell people that people get so caught up with this, oh, I'm a title holder. Here's this ego. Listen, if you're going to do the work, do it. You don't need validation from anyone else to do the work. That's why when you told me you were doing this series on non-title holders, I think it's amazing because there are people who are out there doing the work. If you're just going to be a social justice keyboard warrior, then that's you. That's fine. That's
Yeah,
okay. But don't shit on anyone else, for how they choose to show up in community
that part,
if it's not in the same way that you do.
that
Because not
part.
everybody is posting online. Not everybody has the bandwidth right now to be posting online or to be active online. Some people are out in the streets, hitting the ground running, doing the work. I've been to Albany and a couple of places. I'm always talking to politicians. I'm always doing these things. I don't post it online. I don't need to, because I'm doing the work. The proof will be when policies change. But if you're going to do the work because you care about community, you know, do the work because it affects you and those around you. It affects everyone. Don't do the work because I have this title and it's a part of my contract and that's as far as it's going to go. And then I'm on to the next thing, because I see that often that people are the performative, perfect title holders. And then once that year is up, they're not doing anything. It's back to the life of clubbing and doing whatever. But, I think people need to step away from the drama and focus more on what's really going on in the world. We have a shitty administration right now, you know. There are so many things that is wrong, so many rights that are being stripped away, so many active things that we should be concerned about. Leather drama shouldn't be one of them. So,
I
like,
I I
changing that view that we have to be a part of drama.
I have to tell you, like this whole moment, everything you said, I'm about to turn it into a commercial because, like, for real, like for a commercial for this show, because that energy, look, like what you just said is so relevant, so timely, is happening. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to be aware because the thing that's hurtful about drama in our community is that it impacts people indirectly that you don't even know that you're hurting. When you go and you shit on an event, you negate all the people that were there. Like, we had an event not too long ago, and it's like so of these good things happen, but because of an optic, it's just destroyed, and it makes it hard. And I have to, just as this community has to trust me, I got to learn how to trust this community, because my will and my good faith towards the community isn't about putting out there to be dissected apart and torn down. Like, that's not what we're here for. But I do think as
Absolutely.
people that we do have a right to protect our peace and to protect our work. And if
Absolutely.
you don't feel sharing your work publicly is in the best interest of your mental health and the community's mental health, hey, my new thing I've been telling people, you think this is all I do? I move in silence. I move in silence. I'm very direct. I told everybody I'm going to move in silence because when it's ready, it's ready. But I don't need anything to be taken out of context. And that's so easy to do on the internet. Thank you so
And
much.
not
Like
only
I
that,
said, go ahead. No, finish.
yeah, one more thing. Like not only that, people don't realize when, especially when these posts are public in the way that they are, you open the doors for people that have nothing to do with
Exactly.
community to
Exactly.
come in and judge. And
Mm-hmm.
the way people are being dragged, attacked, and doxxed on social media right now, like, why would you want to put that energy out there? Like myself, when I see things going on, I just look, and sometimes it's exhausting and it's draining, especially when you're posting things from someone else's page and you're putting it to the general public of your page, but you don't know how that's affecting the people on your page because, it's either about SA or it's about, sex offenders and all of these things. And it's just like you don't know who's reading it that you just triggered.
Yeah, you don't.
So, like, consent goes a lot of ways. People should be mindful about digital consent. Ask before you post something. Yes, it is your page, but, if it's going to affect somebody and cause harm, be mindful of that. Everything is not for social media. Some conversations are left to have behind closed doors. Now, some people, yes, need to be called out, but not in the way that it's doing. That's all you see right now. And I'm like, you're focusing on the drama and the call outs, but then the world around you is crumbling and
Yeah,
you're missing that.
I literally just posted this. I said, look, at a time where our enemies want to see us fight and fail, I'm not going to give them that show. So you got to respect that. And this is a boundary. If you're doing that, we are not on the same mission. But I refuse to put on a show for our enemies that want to see, and they're sitting back there,
Exactly.
oh, those queer people, yeah. And that's the
Yep.
reality. And I just don't understand. We're in 2026. We're all in hell right now. You get what I'm saying? We're all in hell right now.
I
So
know, and we only 2 months in.
I'm saying, like, come on, like, let's get out of this. That's what we should be focused on. Anyway,
Doing better.
so I am so honored to have you. Thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for being
Thank you for having
real,
me.
authentic, sharing your life, giving your truth. I appreciate it. People that watch this, the community that supports you is going to appreciate this. So thank you for your time. There's one thing you have to
Thank you
do
so
though
much.
before I let you go.
What?
You got to close this show. Are you ready? I'm going to count to three. And when I count to three, you're going to say, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
One, two, three.
If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. All right, y'all. That's been another episode of Throwing Lights. We are out, and I'll see you for the next show.